Hi everybody. I had said that I would do a short video on the guidance for the final project, and so here we are. This is the guidance that I provided you, and if we go down to the second part, um, here's the applied case project guidance. We would like you to identify, research, and provide findings and recommendations for a case of leadership in organizations that's relevant to your interest. And we talked about how it could be from a case-focused journal, or how you could make your own, or how you could do a kind of a hybrid by finding a case in a journal or an existing case and then modifying it to fit your own needs. The bottom line here about the case is that we want you to have, or I want you to have, a very clear kind of applied situation to which you're going to think about the theory and the research that we've been discussing and that you've been exploring about your own topic, and putting that together in your responses to this particular authentic case. And you can create a role for yourself as, say, a consultant or a leader in an organization or the like, as the kind of focal point for how you're thinking about and addressing the case. So I hope that that makes sense. The purpose of the case is for you to continue to deepen your exposure to and understanding of theoretical concepts and empirical studies that can help organizational leaders and researchers of leadership in organizations understand the structures, context, actors, and practices that they engage in through their work in the setting you've chosen as your case. So I'll go to the rubric because that's what I'd like you to follow in terms of the content and format structure. And then, of course, working hard to use appropriate APA in-text and citations and end-of-text references. So I will, that's basically the assignment. So this is the rubric, and I want you to note that these objectives are actually what you want to be thinking about as part of how you address your project. And so this is true of any kind of rubric where you want to look at how it is that it is laying out what it is that it wants you to do. So first of all, in your response, you should be identifying key concept theories and practices relating to leadership in organizations. You want to kind of talk about taxonomies or categorizations of these concepts, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you should lay out an enumeration of all the taxonomies or categorizations, but if you choose a particular theory or concept, you might say that it comes out of this kind of a tradition, or it comes out of this kind of period, the neoclassical period of organizational or leadership theory, like that. So it doesn't have to be a huge accounting of it, but just addressing it so that we know that you know where this comes from. And you also want to focus more on what your main theories and concepts are, as opposed to things that are more sort of tangential or on the margins. We want you to be able to integrate theory and practice in the business functional areas in terms of what it is that you are identifying as the core issues of your case. And you can focus on any legal and ethical principles. And again, I don't need you to find theory related specifically to these legal and ethical principles unless there is something that you would like to bring to bear. But it is important, I think, for you to identify what might be some of the more legal and ethical components of what it is that you're looking at in your case. Recognize and describe issues of power, diversity, social justice, and social equity relating to leadership and organizational decision-making. So I want you to really clearly identify where are axes of power, what might be the diversity or the non-diversity of the situation, what is the social justice or social equity focus of the work and of the response to this particular organizational issue. And so then in terms of coherent written communication, grammar, ideas, logical flow of your work, kind of a main thesis, and in each paragraph topic sentences and sentences that follow on, following the structure of the paper. You'll be able to demonstrate analytical, critical thinking skills in the context of organizational decision making. So the way that you're looking at your analysis and then your response through the recommendations. And identify and explain interrelationships between educational organizations and leadership in local, regional, national, and international contexts when applicable. So in this case, you want to identify, what kind of a case is this? Is it a local case? Is it an international case, etc.? And to kind of work accordingly from that. So I hope that that's helpful in terms of the things you should be thinking about as you identify and work through your case. All right. And then there's the actual structure, right? So use these specific headings. Construct a case using the following headings, sections, and guidelines, and use, APA. Now the executive summary is what you really tend to do at the end. You will write that at the very end after you've written the rest of the entire paper. First, describe the issues and problems relevant to the case, thinking about all of these things here. You may, you want to identify what are the more important problems from these objectives, what are the less important problems, and so focusing on maybe 3 more important aspects and then drawing into your case later on, or as part of it, should be probably integrated, some of the less relevant objectives, but ones that still we want you to turn an eye to. So what are the key issues or problems? And then who are the stakeholders involved? And think about their perspectives, their particular interests. And again, you probably want to stylize this. You can't talk about every single stakeholder, but you can talk about who the key stakeholders are and what I would say is define and delimit who they are. And then you're going to look at here, and I wrote this in the email to you, connections to theoretical and empirical research. Here it's a little bit like your literature review, where you're talking about what are the relevant theoretical and empirical research studies or works that are relevant to the case itself. So for example, if your case is a case around higher education, there may be some literature that is very focused on higher education that would form the basis of what it is that you're talking about, or the same thing with K-12, or if it's an issue of maybe interpersonal misunderstanding through unclear objectives of a particular initiative or something. You would look to general literature around that and sort of identify what is the field generally saying about these things. And then when you analyze and you say these are the case's central issues and problems, right? Then you want to look more closely at the literature or very specific pieces of the literature that speak specifically to what are the analytic issues the issues that you have analyzed and chosen to be the central issues that you're going to focus on. And these issues that you identify need to lead to what your conclusions are going to be. And your conclusions need to come from the evidence in the literature. And so, for example, you may find that in a particular organizational case, one of the analytical problems is that the leader is really not taking on the kind of leadership style that he or she should for that particular type of organization. And so then your analysis would talk about leadership styles that would be more applicable to that particular organization. And then you would sort of weave your argument so that you can show through the literature that you conclude this type or these 2 types of leadership style might be more beneficial for the particular organization and case that you've identified. And so then that leads into the actual recommendations, or actually what I said is kind of toward the recommendations. So the recommendations that you would state around what it is that they can do to address the case. These recommendations can be presented in bullets, and but each bullet should not just be, one small sentence. You want to kind of, if you do use the recommendations in bullets, you would want to kind of spin them out so that you're very clear about what the recommendations are and what they're drawing upon. And then this idea of the evaluation of the consequences, provide a description and analysis of the expected results of the recommendations for the action should they be implemented. And so you're going to try and spin out how you feel this approach would benefit the case and how it should result based on whether or not these recommendations of yours are applied. And so, more specifically to say, and the results of this would be X, Y, and Z. So I hope that that is clear about what these, how to address each piece. Now in the rubric, this side here is where we have target, acceptable, and unacceptable, and you can read through accurate and detailed descriptions of the problems, identifies and outlines principal problems and issues in the case, provides a well-focused diagnosis of strategic issues and key problems that demonstrates an excellent grasp of the case's present situation and strategic challenges. Your descriptions are compelling and insightful. And then also a thorough and effective executive summary, which again, that you would write that at the end, and that executive summary would talk about basically 3 parts, which is what the issue is, what your main suggestions are for recommendations, and how it is that you feel that this would benefit and address the case. Those are the 3 pieces of that. Over here, in terms of the stakeholder perspectives, you want to clearly and accurately describe the unique perspectives of your key stakeholders, which means you first need to indicate who they are, and demonstrate insightful analysis of the tensions or the conflicts between them, their various interests. In terms of your connecting to the theoretical and empirical research, you want to make these insightful connections between the issues in the case and the relevant theory and empirical data, and integrating multiple sources of knowledge with the case information. So as I said, this is a little bit like the literature review, where you're just identifying these are main areas of the case, and this is general literature that would address it. And then here, more specifically, you assess the facts in the case, and it says in light of empirical and theoretical research. So when you say this is an issue in the case, you can say the literature shows that this is typically a problem. Or the literature, you might say, which is not really well represented in the literature, and thus we need to think more deeply here about how we might address it. And then developing your well-supported conclusions about how to, what constitute the main problems of the issue that you're going to put forward. Here, in terms of your recommendations, you weigh and assess your alternative actions, and you propose, that might be possible, and you propose a plan of action that is realistic and talks about well-reasoned justifications. And then finally, the evaluation of consequences, where you think about why this is a better plan than other plans, and you talk about and evaluate what might result from the plan, and maybe identify consequences that are tied to the case itself. So I hope, I want to identify each one of those little pieces, because those are all sort of how you should be thinking about the case. And this is true really of any rubric. I mean, part of what I'm sharing with you here is how you utilize a rubric. So I see that I'm running out of time. I hope that this has been helpful. Please feel free to contact me if you have questions. And also, I will be asking you to just send me a draft along the way that I can review and quickly feedback on, so that you can have some information going forward about what it's looking like. Hope you're well, and thank you so much. I hope this is helpful.